everyone. Welcome to the Glow Podcast. I am Taylor, your host, and if you are new here, we are Tailored Marketing, and we partner with organizations in healthcare, longevity, and the wellness space to fuel growth through strategic marketing strategies. So if you are interested, drop a comment below. I have a very exciting guest here with me today that I'm very excited to talk to, and I would love if you would just kind of go ahead and introduce yourself so the audience knows who you are.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm Sona Shah, and I'm CEO and co-founder of Neopenda. We design medical technologies particularly for emerging markets. I'm sure I can share a little bit more about my background throughout this session, but we started Neopenda now 10 years ago with the goal of trying to make sure that medical devices are accessible all around the world. Find that most 85% of the world doesn't have access to high quality medical technologies. And so that's really why we started the company, to give everyone accessible health equity around the world.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And that's such an important thing for sure, because it does vary so much on kind of what you have depending on where you are in the world. And so I guess what kind of led you to starting the company and like making kind of this discovery that like, okay, not everyone, depending on the area they're in, has kind of the same access to medical technology?
Yeah, so my journey started as a chemical engineer. I went to Georgia Tech for undergrad and graduated a semester early. So I had a job lined up in pharma, very appropriate for chemical engineering, but
Yeah.
I didn't want to jump right into that. And so I did nothing to do with chemical engineering, and I went to become a primary school teacher in Western Kenya.
Wow.
Yeah, a little bit different.
You did like a 180.
Yeah, totally different. But that's exactly kind of the exposure that I had wanted. We're young and we can do things like that, right?
For sure.
I found this program that placed me in Western Kenya, and it was this really remote community that didn't have running water. It didn't have electricity for a lot of the time that I was there. And it was just incredible. I loved every second that I was there, except for some of the inequities that I was fortunate not to have growing up. And some were in healthcare, but just being there for several months and living kind of the true lifestyle that a lot of the world lives. It was this beautiful life without expectations. Here, if I don't have hot water in the morning, it's a bad day. But over there, it's, we forgot about all of those things. And so it was totally humbling, and it was a really incredible experience, but the inequities are certainly what stuck with me. And so I brought that back to the US and kept thinking about that. But as I started that job in pharma, I really loved the engineering and the healthcare side of things, and just process product development, understanding why does it take so long for medications to actually get to market, and what are the risks associated with it. And so got to see a wide variety of medications going through the pipeline. And so that was a really fun experience, but I kept thinking that the kids that I taught in Kenya may never see the medications that I was helping make. And that was really the inequity that drove me back to graduate school, to somehow figure out how do we provide equitable access to healthcare around the world. I didn't go in knowing that I wanted to be an entrepreneur, although my dad is an entrepreneur. He started his own company before I was born, and so maybe he planted that seed in my mind a little bit. But yeah, went to grad school. I went to Columbia University for my master's in biomedical engineering. There was a lab that was creating an HIV and syphilis diagnostics. Just wanted to get some exposure there. It was a point of care diagnostic. And then I also was working at the TB Alliance, which created tuberculosis medications. So doing a few different things at once. But in my second semester, I was really fortunate to meet my now co-founder, Tess, and we started exploring why is neonatal mortality so much higher in low resource settings than it is here in the US? And there are truly about 1,000 problems that contribute to it, but tinkering in our lab in New York wasn't going to solve any of them.
Yeah.
So we got some funding, went out to Uganda, and we did a needs assessment out there. And I don't know if you or any of our listeners have been to African hospitals, but the very first one that I had gone into, there were literally 150 babies and 2 nurses. Wow. And this is our equivalent of a NICU. And so here the ratios are 2 babies per nurse. And over there it was 75 babies to 1 nurse. And to make things worse, there really wasn't any equipment in the hospital. There was actually a separate room or separate field or separate ward in every single hospital that we'd gone to that nurses called the equipment graveyard. And we realize that it's because medical devices are designed for high-income countries, but that's not where most of the world's population lives. Most of the world lives in low and middle-income countries, and they don't have access to technologies that actually work in their environments, technologies that don't require continuous power or can withstand dust or being dropped onto hard surfaces, or all sorts of constraints that make traditional equipment fail even when we donate them. So that's why we created Neopenda 10 years ago.
Yeah, no, wow, that's such a cool story, because you got to see it firsthand, kind of this inequity, like you said, and then you came back and you're like, okay, how am I gonna find kind of the change that I want to see here? Because it is such a complicated system, which I'm sure you know way better than me and most people, for sure, just how complicated it is, because there are so many factors to include into the equation, especially even when you are working outside of not just healthcare in the United States, but in other countries even as well. There's even more complexities to it.
Yeah, there's definitely, and that's why something as simple as a vital signs monitor, which is our first product, doesn't exist in these markets, because it's really hard. It's really complex. It's medical devices in and of itself. It took us 7 years to get to market. It's hardware, it's regulated, there's a ton of different pieces around it, but we've realized throughout the years that it's not just the innovation on the product side, it's innovation on the business side. How do we work with very low resource environments where the hospitals are constrained in many different things, including budgets? How do we design a product that is affordable for these hospitals, but at the same time can still make us profitable as a company and sustainable in the long run? There were a number of unique constraints that I think led to it, and it is extraordinarily complex. But just because it's hard, just because it's complex, doesn't mean it shouldn't exist. And so we're on a daily basis moving mountains to make this work. Yeah. But we're just so proud to know how many patients we've been able to improve quality of care for, and just be able to increase that access.
Yeah, no, for sure. And so you were talking to just now about one of kind of the first products that you all brought to market that took you 7 years to get approved and everything through, all of the jumps and hurdles that you had to go through, I'm sure. Can you kind of talk just a little bit more to that product, who it's made for, what it does, and how it helps?
Yeah, for sure. So our first product is called NeoGuard. It's a wearable vital signs monitor that helps alert clinicians of patients in distress. So think those big patient monitors that you'd find in any hospital here in the US, just condensed down into a small wearable worn on a baby's forehead. So we're really addressing the problem of too many patients, not enough staff. How do we help the staff identify when a patient is actually in trouble so that they can provide more timely and appropriate treatment? So our wearable device has been designed to measure 4 different parameters continuously. We measure pulse rate, respiratory rate, oxygen saturation, and temperature, all using 2 sensors on the back. So it's kind of combining multiple different technologies into a really simple device. And then every patient wears one of these, and it connects wirelessly over Bluetooth Low Energy to a tablet that we provide with our system. So clinicians can look at one screen and be able to tell what's going on with all their patients. And we trend all the data over time. We provide alerts when any of the vital signs are outside of healthy ranges. So just giving that second set of eyes that our nurses need, giving that voice to our newborns when they don't have a voice beyond, a newborn. And so just really alerting our clinicians when something is wrong with our patients. It's been designed specifically for low resource environments, so it's battery operated. It's easy to clean and reuse. So you just pop the device out of the wearable, you recharge the battery, clean it with alcohol, and then it's ready for reuse on the next patient. So we spent the first 7 years in R&D, and I think one of the hardest parts was actually identifying what was the problem we were trying to solve. And it's counterintuitive, or it seems so intuitive to actually go through the process, but so much academia is focused on creating really cool tech and then finding problems that the tech can solve. But really you should be starting with the problem and understanding what is the actual issue and how can we leverage technology to solve it. So that's a lot of what we focused on for the first couple years, went through many different iterations, got regulatory clearance, and so now we're in over 50 hospitals that are actively using our devices, and
That's
starting
awesome.
to really chart a path forward.
Yeah, that's super, super cool. And what hospitals are you guys primarily in? Is it primarily in Africa?
Yeah, so we're
Yeah.
mostly in Africa, primarily in Kenya to be specific, but we do have devices in many other countries. Uganda and Ghana are secondary markets, and then we also have devices in Tanzania and Nigeria, a couple of other countries across the continent. So a lot of our focus is, it's a mix of public and private facilities. We're now at the stage of engaging with larger county governments, which is our equivalent of states, and so much broader procurement across the country of Kenya. And then as we continue to scale there, we're eager to expand to many different sectors. And expansion, one of the biggest challenges that we have, which is a good problem to have, is that there's too many opportunities for expansion. And I think a lot of startups end up failing because they try to grow too quickly, or they try to expand before they have the infrastructure and systems in place. And so,
Yeah.
we can expand our product pipeline, we can expand to new patient populations, to new geographies. And so we're working through that expansion strategy and what's next for us.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And how primarily, because you said that basically, people are coming to you like, hey, we want this, like we need this. This is something
Yeah.
we need in our hospital. And so how are people kind of primarily finding out about the device?
Yeah, so in our markets, it does operate a little bit differently. Most of our clinicians are not on socials. So,
Yeah.
digital marketing, digital media just isn't really, that's not the most effective way to reach our people. So we actually switched our business model partway through after our commercial launch, because we realized that going directly to our hospitals was the best way to engage with them. We know the product the best because we designed it with and for our users. We have dedicated, concerted effort towards engaging with our clinicians. So to kind of the direct sales model, we started in the private sector, just going door to door,
Yeah.
knocking on hospitals and engaging with clinicians, demonstrating how the product works, and kind of giving them a chance to interact with it. And, immediately they found need for it. They realized the affordability of the product and the value that it's providing to the facility, the economic and the patient impact value
Yeah.
that it's providing. And so we started to gain enough traction that public hospitals started getting really interested, and so we started engaging with them. We do go to a lot of conferences. We are constantly supporting various clinicians in a lot of their initiatives, and then a lot of it is word of mouth. So when
Yeah.
our hospitals are enjoying their product, they tell their friends about it, and their friends work at different hospitals, and so it just becomes this really incredible network effect. And so it's a combination of kind of pushing product out there through conferences and direct sales and channel partners, as well as just our customers referring us to other people.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's super, super cool. And so you talked a little bit about expansion and kind of goals coming up. What are kind of goals for expansion? What does that look like for you guys at Neopenda?
Yeah, so expansion for us takes a variety of forms. We've got an R&D team, we've got our commercial team, we've got supply chain, regulatory. All of that is in a 10-person team. So,
Yeah.
we've got a pretty incredible team that is extraordinarily dedicated, but there's only so much that we can do as a 10-person team. And
Yeah.
so with that in mind, the next expansion avenues for us are to go from neonatal patients to pediatric and adults. Because we've designed for the smallest patient population, and arguably the most challenging given how vulnerable these patients are, it's easy for us to scale up from newborns to pediatric and adults. So right now we're validating on different locations on the body, just for usability purposes. Understandably, keeping it on the forehead is not the ideal place for adults, and so we're looking
Yeah.
at different locations on the body. And then from there, we've gotten a lot of customer feedback. All of our expansion is driven by customer demand, and that's how one of the things that we're most proud of is just human-centered design and making sure that we're designing with and for our users. So we've gotten a lot of customer feedback around the monitor is great for inpatient monitoring. So if you're staying in a hospital overnight, what happens in the primary care where care is still mostly being delivered? How do we reduce the delays in seeking care? Because a lot of patients are suffering because they don't know that they need to go into a hospital or a facility or get care. So we've expanded NeoGuard, our continuous monitor, into NeoSpot, which is our spot checking monitor. Leverages the exact same hardware, different is instead of your centralized dashboard on a tablet, we now have a smartphone application that allows you to instantaneously view all of the vital signs that we're measuring. This is solving a different problem. We're focusing on how do we get patients to the hospital faster when they need to be there, and how do we keep patients out of the hospital when they don't need to be there, so we're not overcrowding the facilities and taking up beds from the patients who truly need to be there. So we're excited to be launching NeoSpot next year.
Awesome.
And just focusing on the primary sector. And then in parallel, kind of thinking about our expansion strategy. A lot of people ask us, why aren't you in all 54 countries in Africa? And coming to the US and moving globally. And I think that really is just, we will be there. We will do all of those things, but it takes time. And I think every country in Africa has a different set of inequities, and some of them are similar, some of them are different. And so we're in the phase of understanding what are the similarities. That's easy to scale. It's more the differences and understanding supply chain and sales and marketing and the healthcare infrastructure. How does that vary as we go from country to country, and creating a playbook that allows us to scale more rapidly then?
Yeah, I feel like that's super awesome that you guys are also developing the device for kind of more of that outpatient care, like you said, to keep overcrowding out of the hospitals and get people to the hospital when they need to, because I feel like there's two extremes of like the sector where somebody's like, okay, I need to go to the hospital, like I have this little issue, and then there's people that are like, I'm fine,
Yep.
So that totally makes sense. And then, like you were talking about too, when you're just playing to one market, it's a little bit easier because you kind of come to understand it eventually. But when you're going to, like you said, 54 different markets, it's figuring out like each individual market because they're completely different. I feel like in the US, we have 50 different states, and each state is different, so like you can only imagine completely separate countries. They're gonna have obviously completely different regulations. Their healthcare systems are gonna work completely independently of each other. So that I see how that could definitely be a challenge with even just trying to figure out like, okay, how are these markets the same, how are they different?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the tougher part is there's no playbook. Medical devices have been designed for the US. Of course, by design, every startup is different and unique in many different ways, but the markets that we're operating in, medical devices, just I can count on one hand the number of people that are doing something similar to what we're doing, and not creating vital signs monitors, just medical devices overall for the African continent. And I think that's where it's a lot of stumbling and figuring it out, and then getting right back up and understanding what the failures are, what the mistakes are, and then moving forward and taking those as lessons. And so there's no playbook, we're writing it, which is also the really exciting part of it, is just being able to really shape the way that medtech is viewed on the African continent and globally. This isn't a nonprofit. What we're doing isn't charity. It's impactful for sure. But it's also really showing that there can be a sustainable way to create medical devices for the most underserved populations.
Yeah, no, I think that that's great. Like you said, I mean, what you're doing, like, yes, it's very impactful, but it's not charity. Like you are still trying to run a profitable business as well. And so that's like a whole nother challenge kind of in itself, because a lot of people that are doing, similar things kind of to what you're doing, they typically are like operating at a 501c3, and so you're trying to run a profitable business too. So that's a whole nother layer to it.
Yeah. Exactly. And I think it's a lot of understanding and knowing the market. I mean, with the continent that has one of the fastest growing populations in the world, that there's just more and more people, there's more and more babies that are needing care. There are more and more facilities that are popping up on a very routine basis. And with that, these hospitals need medical devices that actually work there, and they shouldn't have to pay 10 times more than what we can design for. And again, we still see healthy profit margins on every sale that we make. And so it's not that it's impossible, it's just we need more people to be focusing on it. We need more people to be investing in companies like ours to really see that difference. We need more entrepreneurs to be taking those risks and taking those challenges and embracing the unknown. So we need more people to be in this space. But we knew going into this that it was never going to be easy.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, well, it sounds like you haven't really taken the easy way out for most of your life. So you're like, why start now?
Exactly. It's funny, I don't tell this to my investors, but basically I'm uncomfortable with stability. When I feel like there's stability, then we're not taking enough risks. We're not doing enough. And so certainly with the company, obviously stability is important for a variety of different reasons, but we can push our boundaries. We can push what is possible. And that's the only way that we've been able to get to where we are today.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I love that. Well, cool. Well, tell everybody, where is the best place to find you online? Where is the best place to learn more about Neopenda as well? I will also include everything in the show notes for easy access for my listeners.
Yeah, that sounds great. Well, we're actually inviting everyone to be part of Neopenda's journey to co-own Neopenda. And so what that actually means is we're raising a community investment round on WeFunder. And so for just $100 or more, of course, you can become an owner in Neopenda. So you can find us at www.wefunder.com/Neopenda, or you can go to our website, neopenda.com, just to learn a little bit more about who we are and what we're doing. Encourage all of you to join our story and be part of what we're building. We realize that it's not just capital that we need, it's expertise, and every single individual has something that they can contribute to really both making that impact on patients and showing that there is a profitable pathway in emerging markets. So we invite you to join us and to be part of our journey.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time and you sharing more about your journey and Neopenda as well. So thank you again.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to be here.